Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, Tulsa's source for great gardens, southwoodgardencenter.com, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. On today's show, host Casey Hinches has 5 great plants for fall foliage. We have a fun garden craft project for kids and adults. In our garden shed, we build our own tool organizers to keep things tidy and productive. And Barbara Brown takes us on a trip to Mozambique with a traditional dish called shima.
When we talk about fall foliage, we often think of large trees, but if you have a small landscape, you might not be able to incorporate many trees. Here are 5 that you can incorporate to add more fall foliage.
Plant number 1.
Itea virginica, also known as sweet spire, is a shrub that gets about 3 to 4 feet tall. It grows in full sun, but you can push it into shade a little bit. It has cylindrical white flowers that come on in spring into early summertime. You can see it has lovely red foliage that it produces in late fall. There is a cultivar called Henry's Garnet that also produces even more red foliage on it in the fall time, and is said to have bigger, larger flowers on it in the summertime. It prefers moist, well-drained soils, but is adaptable to many soil conditions.
Plant number 2.
Amsonia herbectii is a great fall foliage plant as it gets this golden color with its nice fine foliage. You might remember we featured it on the show before as a great pollinator plant with its star-shaped light blue flowers that it gets in late spring, early summer. Now it does get quite large. You can see it's about 4 feet tall, and it will flop sometimes, so the best way to prevent it from flopping is to cut it back by about 6 inches right after it blooms. Amsonia herbectii is a native that prefers full sun.
Plant number 3.
Euonymus alata is appropriately named burning bush, as you can see the brilliant red fall foliage that it gets. It prefers to grow in full sun. You can push it into shade a little bit, but you're going to sacrifice some of this fall color. It is a shrub that gets to be about 15 feet tall, but is most often trimmed to stay more compact. It prefers well-drained soils, but does like consistent watering.
Plant number 4.
Hydrangea corsifolia, also known as the oak leaf hydrangea, is named that because of the shape of the leaf. But with fall color like this, you would think it would be more reminiscent of a maple tree. Now, we often think about oak leaf hydrangeas for their panicles that they get, the white panicles that they get in the summertime. They turn a light pink later on as the flowers mature, but we have beautiful fall foliage off of this plant as well. Now, oak leaf hydrangeas, you want to make sure not to prune them this time of the year in the fall, as they bloom on old wood. So they've already set their flower buds on their stems. If you were to cut those now and prune the plant back, you would be removing those flowers for next year. So the ideal time to prune an oak leaf hydrangea is right after it flowers. Oak leaf hydrangeas can range in a height from 4 to 8 feet depending on which cultivar.
Plant number 5.
Little blue stem is one of our favorite ornamental grasses, and one reason why our prairies have so much color to them. As the name implies, it has a blue hue to the stems during the summertime that then turns to this reddish purple color in the fall. Being a native, it is used to our dry summer months and also sometimes our less than stellar soil conditions. In fact, if you do plant it in too rich of a soil, it can flop on you. That's one of the problems with this plant, is planting it in too rich of a soil, as it has no major pest problems. This particular plant is a cultivar known as smoke signal, reaching about 40 inches tall and having even more brilliant color. While you might not have more space for trees, these 5 shrubs will ensure that you have plenty of fall color.
Hey, Casey, we're all surrounded by this really cool fall color, so I thought we'd have a fun kids activity to take advantage of it.
Does it have to do anything with what you're wearing?
Maybe. Yes, I have made a leaf crown.
Okay.
Except, you know, but I like to have extra fun with things. So besides the leaf crown, I also made some antenna. So I am a bug.
Oh.
So you can make a bug antenna leaf crown, or you can just do whatever you want.
Okay.
So I figured I'd show you how to do it, so if the kids at home want to make one, they can make one.
This will be a great Thanksgiving activity.
Yeah.
So what do we do?
I just got some cardstock, so because it's kind of thicker, but you could use poster board or regular paper, construction paper, whatever. And then I cut it. I just kind of figured out a good width, and I folded it a few times. And I cut it so all the sections would be about the same size. And what we're going to do is we're going to tape it together.
I think one of these will fit. Yeah.
So we're going to make an extension here.
So I need to cut one of these.
No, I made one. I made mine already. We'll make this one for you.
Okay.
So I'm just going to tape this together.
I'll go ahead and make one too.
Let me see if this is long enough. Nope. Need
I
a
have
third
a big
one.
head.
Mine has 3 also, so. Okay, so we figure out what size, and I'll cut off a little bit of extra here.
Careful. Careful with that.
All right, now I'm going to tape it.
Do I still have hair?
Yeah. All right, let me tape it again real quick. All right, so now we know about the right size. All right, now you can take it off. And what we're going to do is I gathered some different colored leaves from different trees, different shapes. And then, you know, don't forget the seeds, because you got really neat seeds.
Oh, yeah.
In the fall.
Got Japanese maple, baptisia, little sumac.
You can also get these long catalpa seeds and make antennae if you want. Or, you know, if you're like into like ham radio, you can make like this big antenna. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to make little loops of tape and pick out a couple leaves, and we're just going to overlap them.
I'm going to do this big one.
Okay, well, we'll just like tape that one straight on and then cover it up with other leaves. All right, so I'll just go between here, because this is going to be kind of heavy.
I got to be the difficult one and use a big one. Here, we're going to cut this off a little bit. There we go.
And then we'll just put other leaves on top of it to kind of hide the tape and stuff. You get that last leaf on there?
So we've shingled it so you don't see the tape too much. I think we're done.
I think we're good.
Got it all on. Which side to put on the front now? How does it look?
How's it look? Are we ready for a fall party?
During the summer months, we often get distracted with the plants in our garden, and sometimes we neglect those other chores that we need to do just to make our lives easier. And one of those is organizing a tool shed. Wintertime is a great opportunity to do that, and that's what we are doing today here at one of our sheds at the Botanic Garden. So we have a new shed, and we've been just laying our tools up against the wall, which is not a safe practice because they can fall and poke eyes out and things like that. So what we're going to do is actually work on developing a system that holsters our tools with this PVC pipe. Now, it seems relatively straightforward, but we learned a few tips that I want to share with you as we go through this process. The first thing that you want to do is kind of take into account the system that you're working with and what environment you have. So here we have some framing that we need to account for, and also the angle of our roof kind of creeps in a little bit. And so you want to make sure that your tools are able to pull out easily and not hit that. The other thing you want to look at is how many tools that you have. So really the best way to do it is to lay out your tools, see how many you have that have long straight handles, and how many you might have that have a stirrup handle that you'll need to hook on there rather than using the PVC pipe. The other thing is all of our tools are different widths, and also some of them are different heights. And so which way arrangement works best and is most efficient for your space? The next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and start cutting our backboard that we use to mount our PVC. Now that we have our boards cut, we need to figure out the height at which to put our backboards. And this is kind of important because a lot of different people will be using this, so we don't want to set it too high. The other thing is we want to make sure that we have plenty of clearance to pull those tools out. So we have figured about 36 inches is a good height to put that main board for the tools, and then we're going to go with a height of about 6 inches. Now I have seen versions of this where people put this straight on the ground. The thing I didn't like about that is these cups can hold soil and different things that you might track into the shed, and having them elevated a little bit will allow us to clean that out. So we're going to measure a height of 36 inches and then a height of 6 inches to mount these boards. So now that we have our measurements marked, we're going to go ahead and wedge these in here, and some of them are a little bit snug, but we can use a hammer to get those in there. Now I wanted to mention that we are not using weather treated wood. A lot of times we do purchase weather treated wood because we're working with projects for outside, but because this is inside, it's not going to be exposed to the elements. So it's a little bit of a cheaper. You can see it's pretty snug in there, but we just want to make sure that it's relatively level. You can tap it if you need to level it a little bit better. We've got that. Now the other thing we're going to use is a drill first to pre-drill pilot holes, and that'll just help guide our screw in a little bit better. So the next thing that we're going to need to make is our PVC collars, and we have two sizes here. I wanted to demonstrate because you have to choose a size. Now a larger size will give you more clearance, but it can give you a little bit too much clearance. Here we have a pitchfork, and you can see that it bows pretty significantly here, and we've got to clear our ceiling and also our framework of our shed. And so while it allows for a better angle to clear that framing, once we have it in place, it allows for too much flexibility, and that tool can spin and be a safety issue. So this was the 4-inch that gave us too much clearance. We went with a 3-inch PVC pipe that still allows for an angle for us to clear our framing, slips in there, and it securely keeps that tool in place. So now we need to go cut our 3-inch PVC pipe. The next thing we need to do is go ahead and cut our PVC collars that we're going to use as our holsters for our tools. Now you can cut this on an angle if you have a chop saw or something. You can also use a skill saw, but you might have to cut it twice. We're just doing straight cuts. It's a lot simpler, and really we're just talking about holding tools. So there's no necessary reason for doing it on an angle. So we're going to measure these to be about 4 inches in length. That will be the cup that we put our tools in. So we'll get those measured and we'll start chopping. We've got our PVC pipe cut, 2 for each tool, 1 for the mid-level and 1 for the lower level. And we're going to attach those now to our backboard. Now, a lot of times we think about measuring and everything is identical, but here's when you want to lay your tools up against the wall, because a rake is going to be further off of our framework than, say, a shovel is. So we really want to make sure where our PVC is going to go aligns with our tool. The other thing is we want to make sure our 2 cups or our 2 sleeves align on the backboard. So we want to make sure that they're parallel. To attach the PVC pipe and the hooks, we used a shorter screw, a 1 5/8 inch screw. We did have some stirrup handle tools that were a little bit taller than our PVC pipe backboard, and so we had to attach a board that was a little bit higher in order to hang those hooks. Now that we've got our tools all organized, it's really nice to come into a shed and be able to easily identify your tools. This was a fun way to spend one of those winter days when you might not want to be outside to organize your tools. We used materials that we had available for a fun afternoon project to organize our tools. But of course, if you're not up for this task, there's always kits available.
I want to spend a little bit of time today talking with you about some of my experiences in Mozambique. And one of the things that I found there, as you do whenever you travel, is the food is somewhat different, but there's some similarities between what we have here at home. So one of the very common dishes that people ate where I was is called shima, and we're going to make that today. Shima is made with maize meal, which is difficult to find in the States. It's somewhat similar to cornmeal, which you can see on this side in the yellow, but cornmeal is much more coarse and maize meal is very fine, very much more like flour. So if you can get a white cornmeal, it tends to have a finer feel to it. There's one brand in particular, Aunt Jemima's, that is closer to what I was seeing there than anything else that I found here. You can get it online, but it costs you an arm and a leg, and we're just going to adapt what we can to fit where we are here. So these are the two things. They're prepared in very much the same ways if you were going to make cornmeal mush, however. So I've got about 3 cups of water that it was at a boil. I'm going to turn it back on and let it come back to 1, and about a half a teaspoon of salt. Now, a lot of the shima that I ate and tasted there didn't seem to have salt in it or much at all. So I'm adding a little bit more to it for bringing it more to the American palate, or at least to my own palate. I've also got a cup of the cornmeal here, the white cornmeal. I'm going to mix that because we want to avoid lumps as much as we can with a cup of cold water. And this is the same way that I was raised doing cornmeal mush. Cornmeal mush in the States has been eaten by low-income folks for many, many, many years. I was raised on part of it, not necessarily because I was low income, but because I was raised by parents who had been low income at one time, and it becomes part of your culture. So mixing it with the cold water enables me to get these two together without having lumps to it. If you want to add it directly to the hot water, it requires extensively more stirring. Going to add that. I turn the burner off so that I can get this mixed in, again to reduce the possibility that we're going to have lumps. And now that I've got those blended in, I'm going to turn it back on. Now in Mozambique, this is not necessarily the way this would be done. This kind of a dish, as I mentioned, is common in the States with a slightly different version of cornmeal. It's also very common throughout Africa, and it's called different things in different countries, but it's a very common food that's eaten by folks that don't have a lot of money. And the primary reason for it is to fill you up. So you'll be given very large servings of it. 2 to 3 cups would be a serving, simply because the main goal of it is to help people not be hungry. Now, this is going to come to a low boil. We're going to let it cook for a little bit longer period of time there. I want it to thicken up. It becomes very, very thick, similar to the way polenta does. We're familiar with that in the States now. We know that it's used in Italy a lot. So I want this to continue to thicken up, so I'm going to turn it on low and let it continue to cook for as much as 10 minutes. Check it every once in a while and make sure that it's not scorching on the bottom. But if you've got it on low heat, it should be okay. Now, as I mentioned, it's common. It doesn't have a lot of flavor, so it's usually served with something else. And so what I have cooking over here is what would be referred to as a relish. And basically, it combines whatever is in season. If the family has meat or fish available, which are also fairly common, fish is real common where I was because it's right on a river. Along the coast, they have a lot of seafood. You're just going to saute these in a little bit of fat or oil or a little bit of water if you don't have that, and let that cook until the other is ready. Now, families there would use this as a main meal, very, very common. What I was doing there was that they have these types of produce in season, and then they don't have anything to serve with the shima. So my goal was to look at ways to dehydrate food, to see if we could extend that season. So we worked on building dehydrators with materials that are common or at least available there. One of the things I was surprised that was not available were cardboard boxes, because we were making dehydrators, solar dehydrators, out of cardboard boxes, little wooden slats, wrapping screening over them, and then plastic over the top of that. And the hardest thing to find was actually the cardboard box, because they don't let go of them. It's something that the family can continue to use multi-purpose and for many things. So to use it as a dehydrator was giving something up that could be used for something else. So we prepared the dehydrators, we prepared bananas, we prepared tomatoes, and we put those in those solar dehydrators, and we left them there with folks so that they could put them out in the sun. We taught them how to bring them in so that they would maintain quality of the product during night or during the rain, how to aim them towards the sun during the day, and then hopefully we'll be able to work with them. I left them information on how to use some of these foods, but my goal would be to be able to go back and use some of the dehydrated food that they've done, and also look at dehydrating some other things. They have a lot of greens, they have cabbage, they have many other things, and we only had time to work with tomatoes and bananas. So if we can get it to the point where they are pleased with the product that they make for eating with their shima from dehydration, then maybe we can help a lot of the families get through times of the year when food is not as abundant. So let's check and see how we're doing. This normally would cook a little bit longer. You can see that it's already getting thicker. It will thicken up. If you wanted it to be even thicker, you could take it off the heat and let it chill just like you would polenta. You can cut it and fry it the same way you would that kind of thing. And then this is going to be mounded on the plate or in a bowl. And as I said, the servings are fairly large there. This is actually about half of a serving of what I would have been given when I was in Mozambique. And then the relish goes on the side. Now, this is also a little bit hotter than what would be given, and the reason that it's allowed to get plenty thick is because very often it's eaten with the hands, so that it cools down enough. You can take a small amount of it with your hands and roll it into a small ball and then combine it with the relish that you have. The relish would also often be much finer, so that it would be easier for them to eat with their hands. They could just actually dip it into the relish that they had, or you could scoop it up with the shima. I hope this is something that you'll give a try. It's something different, it's something that's worldly, but something that also fits our own culture and it comes comes back. You can see how small the world is when you do a little bit of travel, and you can kind of connect the dots with the foods that folks are eating there and the foods that you grew up eating here. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.
There are lots of great horticultural events this time of year. Be sure and consider these activities when you're making your plans for the weeks ahead. Next week is our last new show for the year. We will have tips for caring for poinsettias. We revisit topics from previous segments. Gardening guy Paul James joins Casey to help decorate for the holidays. Barbara Brown bakes scones. And we introduce you to a new sprout in our garden. There's so much to enjoy during this beautiful fall season, but we really hope you can join us again next week for more TV You'll Grow to Love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We wish to thank our generous underwriters, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society. We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.